Next on Curate, looking to nature's gifts for form and inspiration.
Obviously nature, animals influence a lot. Also things like science.
Sharing secrets for capturing stunning action shots in the wild.
Making beautiful pictures is just a matter of time.
Envisioning art, even from dried fruit.
Every culture who knows this story is going to put it in context.
Creating natural sculptures from the inside out.
My concept is not going to come alive with ceramic materials. It's going to come alive with metals or fruit and pig intestine.
It's all ahead on Curate.
Welcome to Curate. I'm Heather Mazzoni.
And I'm Jason Kipros. Thanks for joining us this week as we bring you more of the stories of artists from Hampton Roads and across America.
In this episode, we'll learn how many artists find their inspiration through nature. For glassmakers Robin and Julia Rogers of Chesapeake, nature provides both the material and the subject.
A lot of our work is anthropomorphic in nature. Julia and I have been collaborating since 2009 or 10.
If we could, we should.
We love glass, and we just followed glass. We would always talk to each other about our work, and we would always influence each other and give each other ideas.
We talk constantly about the pieces we want to make and how we see them going. Throughout the whole process, things change, and the idea might shift, and we're open to that. It's hard when you both do the same thing. You're both artists, you're both glass sculptors, and we were making work that was not too dissimilar from each other. And then one person has a show or one person sells a piece, and we just felt like our thought process, our making process, everything was very similar in that we should just join forces. Our collaborative work, definitely, there's a lot of different pools of inspiration. Obviously nature, animals influence a lot. Also things like science and also science fiction.
I'm not singing for you anymore.
We made a piece that was a time traveler from Norfolk that traveled back to this day and age. It's a fish person. But so there's a bit of science fiction and real science, the natural world. The show we're having in Michigan at the Habitat Gallery is it's an invitational, so just to be invited is a huge honor for us.
They asked for that show for the theme based on some kind of event in your life that changed your work. And we kind of decided to focus on parenthood. Our lives are pulled in many different directions, and you may have your children pulling at you, but there's life and work and everything. Phoenix loves to draw and paint, and especially play with Play-Doh.
This is going to be the head.
Okay. She said she wanted to make a goat head because she saw me, making one.
I used a pen to put stripes on my horn. Do you want a pen?
No, I want my finger to put stripes.
Keep turning, keep turning. Our kids are very, very important, obviously the most important thing to us, and they do influence our work. The first time Ren worked or touched glass, molten glass, he was probably
4, I think?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years old. They just wanted him to experience that molten material and how it feels and how it moves.
Take it up, keep it turning, keep it level.
And so it kind of was made a lot of sense to build a small furnace at our house. There's just something nice about creating in your own home. Our home has always been a studio.
What kind of body should we do?
We realized that, especially this series with the animals, they have some small components, and the head and the hands might take an hour or more to sculpt. So the longer you spend on a piece, the more intense it becomes because you've got all this invested in it.
So actually I'm going to start with the horns. I need to make those, put them in the garage.
After that I'm going to set up. So tension kind of builds just because, we have so much more and more invested by every minute.
Reach a level that's above my head. You're fluorescent, I'm the switch. The taste of everything is making me sick. You've been helpless, I've been good. Your point of interest is not understood.
I think it's important in the hot shop to try to stay calm. The glass is very alive. I think that it picks up the feeling that the energy that you're giving off. And I think when people are stressed out and anxious, that the glass is not going to work as well. So it's kind of magical, but glass is very magical.
And we're figuring out the final posture, the final placement of the tilt of the head, the hands, all these things are really important, even the lean of the body.
Okay, here, look. Easy, take your time. Okay, easy, take your time, Carl, take your time.
And then our process continues long after that, because there's cold working processes where you might sandblast. Sometimes we go back in with oil paint, sometimes we use mixed media.
Did you see it in there? Did you get a shot of it?
No, I didn't. Can I?
I can open it just for a second, okay?
Alright, hopefully, go.
I'm moving from a town to a city.
We did the rabbit mother and have several rabbits pulling at her skirt and one in her arms.
I'm moving from a town to a city. Let's go.
With the goat woman, we wanted to talk about caring for your young and gathering food for them. So she's going to be holding a basket of fruit, and she'll have a piece of fruit in her hand. Right now we need to finish focusing on the show and getting this sent out, but we won't feel safe until it gets there. When we make our pieces, we hope that people respond to them and like them, but we just have to put all our feeling and our care into it, just like we do with our children.
I feel very fortunate doing what we do. It's incredible that we can make a living teaching glass making and have some income off of actually selling our artwork. It's incredible. My family's in Ohio, her family's in Oregon. We see them a couple times a year. It'd be nice to be able to choose exactly where we live, but we've followed glass wherever it's taken us.
The couple will also be teaching at the legendary Pilchuck Glassmaking School in Washington State. The center was founded by sculptor Dale Chihuly in 1971. You'll find more on Robin and Julia's glasswork on our website, whro.org/curate.
For photographer Steve Gettle, globe trekking isn't the only way to discover beauty. Sometimes it can be found in your own backyard. The Detroit artist takes nature photography to a whole new level and shares some of his secrets with us.
Making beautiful pictures is just a matter of time. The beauty's out there. All you got to do is be out there enough to capture it and be in front of it when it happens. As a little kid, I was out hunting frogs and hunting turtles, and then I picked up a camera to start documenting things that I saw. I've been taking pictures for over 30 years. I started off with a Minolta X370, which was a real entry-level camera. I explored the woods and fields around my home and photographed basically anything in nature that wouldn't stop moving. I was going through my desk the other day and I found an envelope filled with my best shots from back in the day, just little 3x5 prints, and there was a bald eagle in there and the white-tailed deer and the green heron and things like that. One of the goals that I'm trying to do is to get different behaviors, and one of the things that I love to photograph is action. It's being able to stop action, photographing birds in flight and animals running, and show people something that they couldn't see with their naked eye. Well, my camera actually takes 10 frames per second. When you're photographing birds in flight, it's all about wing position. You want their wings up or you want their wings down. You want them in a pleasing position. So the more frames per second you can take, the better your chances are of capturing that peak action. Michigan's really a great place for a photographer to be. Michigan is such a great state because of the diversity of wildlife we have. You go up in the Upper Peninsula and you may as well be in Canada. We have wolves and lynx and bobcat and all the different, and the boreal forest species up there, and then you come down here into southern Lower Peninsula and we have, you know, great white-tailed deer herds and turkey and all the songbirds, and it's very, very diversified. I've been photographing in Kensington for probably 20 years. Photographed the sandhill crane nest, and there's an osprey nest there that I shoot pretty regularly, and then they have a beautiful heron rookery. That's a great opportunity for photography. Taking photographs is a lot like fishing. You know, you're out there working all the time and you're taking a lot of pictures, but really what we're doing is we're trying to get those trophies, that wow factor image. When I go out, I'm always open to serendipity. If an opportunity presents itself, I'm going to make that picture. But generally, I go out with a purpose. Most people are surprised to hear that many of my images are pre-visualized in my head. I think of a picture that I want to make, and then I go out and figure out a way to make that picture. And that's one of the things that I love about nature photography is solving those puzzles, figuring out how can I get a cardinal on this pine branch, or how can I get a picture of the sandhill crane feeding its young. And that's one of the challenges I really enjoy in nature photography. If I could only photograph one thing, it would probably be birds. I really love photographing birds. They're so beautiful, and they have interesting, you know, courtship behaviors and nesting behaviors and things like that. There's a lot of things to photograph, but then after that, it'd probably be the macro photography. And I do a lot of things with high-speed flash, where I use high-speed flash to freeze action. So this is my latest and greatest project. This is something I put together to photograph moths in flight. So what happens is the moths come out of the woods, and they fly around this light, and as they fly around this light, there's two lasers that cross and make an X in front of the camera lens here. And when they break the beam, it takes their pictures. One of the drawbacks of macro photography is the depth of field, the zone of sharpness in a picture. So the closer you get, the less depth of field you have, the less sharpness you have. So now with computers, now we're able to do something called focus stacking, where we take a series of images at different focus points and then combine them in the computer and give us unlimited depth of field. I travel a lot, so when you go to Africa, every time you get in a safari vehicle, it's a brand new day, and around every corner, you just never know what you're going to see. You could see a cheetah chasing a gazelle, or two lions having a fight, or a great giant bull elephant walking across the Ngorongoro crater. So you got to be open to those possibilities when they present themselves. I go to Africa every year. I've been to Costa Rica probably almost a dozen times, the Galapagos, Ecuador, Peru, Belize, all over North America. It's the experience of a lifetime. It's absolutely epic. A lot of my favorite pictures actually probably aren't my best pictures, because when I look at my pictures, I've got all the memories of what was going on when I made that image. I spend enough time around animals that I can read the signs when they're getting nervous. But I will tell you, one time I was out in Yellowstone, and there was a bull moose, and he was walking through the river, and he stopped behind this hill, and I wanted him to take one more step, so I gave him my which is female moose for hey big boy, and this guy came running, and I was with a 600mm lens. I was way far away, and he come running right at me. I started off shooting film, so I actually shoot digital a lot like I shot film. I don't do a lot of Photoshop and things like that to my images. I shoot a format called digital raw, and what that means is it's an unprocessed image in the camera, out of the camera. So I have to color correct it and sharpen it, and that's about all I do to my images. It's important for me to be true to nature and to the image, because I want to preserve it the way it is, and I don't think I need to do anything beyond what I see through the camera usually. You never know what people are going to take away from your work. I would hope that people would take away a love and appreciation for nature, and in a perfect world want to help preserve it and protect it.
Steve's images have shown in galleries and museums all over the world, including the Museum of Natural History in London.
some artists find another use for the things we often feel only serve one purpose. Watch closely now how Amy Knight of Columbus, Ohio, turns squash into something a little more fruitful.
We're at St. Francis of Assisi in Victorian Village. This is the church hall, which is underneath the main church. Well, I've always liked gourds, and some years ago I saw a nativity in a fair trade store here in Columbus, and it was a two-piece nativity made out of gourds, wood burn, from Peru. And I thought, I like gourds, I can do that. So I started on just the mama and papa, and then I found a gourd that looked like a giraffe to me. And I figured, okay, if there's going to be a giraffe, there has to be other African animals. So it just grew out of that. I've got about 65 animals. I have a couple of favorite pieces. I like the bat. I like the porcupine. I like the cheetah. I like the rats. They were the second two that I made after the giraffe, the rats. They're all dried gourds, so they're not going to rot, they're not going to mold or anything else. They're all wood burned. The Indian King's camel took me a week to do, just the week, because he was a two-humper and he has lots of hair growing out of him, and then, of course, he's got to have saddle and all that kind of stuff. And I look for specific shapes sometimes. Sometimes I go and something calls to me and says, I know that's a sheep, or I know that's an alligator, or whatever. And sometimes I just go looking for parts, like gourd stems or long neck gourds that I can use the long neck as legs on something. The loofahs make great sheep. Gourd seeds make ears and tongues sometimes. Gourd stems are legs and tails. A lot of the things that the kings bring are natural things that I found outside, or I found some strange pod from East Africa at the gourd show. It's interesting that when you open up a gourd, you never know what you're going to find inside. Sometimes the inside is a luminous color that looks almost silvery, and so you can use that. I got an angel that has wings and a halo out of that, and I did nothing to the inside of the gourd. That's the way it came. You never know what you're going to find out, and that's the exciting part, that every time that you open up a gourd, it's a brand new experience. 2 years ago, I added a queen. Instead of the three kings, I added a queen, an Egyptian queen. The angels all play traditional African instruments. The African king has traditional kente cloth for the mat that he puts his things on, and he wears a traditional kente cloth fabric. The same with the Asian king and the Indian king. The fabrics that they wear and the mats that they have their gifts on are traditional to that era or that culture. Every culture who knows this story is going to put it in context for them that's meaningful for them, whether it's an Alaskan nativity or whether it's a Chinese nativity. They're all going to be in. So this is an African nativity to me.
Knight continues to add to that nativity, which she started working on back in 2010. Do you have an artist profile, a music video, or short film? If you have a project or clip that's under 4 minutes in length, email a link to curate@whro.org. We'll highlight some of them throughout the series.
To Jamestown, Colorado, where we find ceramic artist Martha Russo. Wait until you see how she uses her art form to preserve what nature has given us.
Give it a mix. Because of the nature of the way the ceramics material works, you make it, it's this live thing, it's got water, it dries out, you put it in the kiln. That process sets me up for all kinds of experimentation because there's this part where you have to give it up to the kiln and you have to see what happens and then react to it. And there'll be a time when I'm working and my concept is not going to come alive with ceramic materials. It's going to come alive with metals or fruit and pig intestine and all sorts of resins and epoxies. But I use them in the same sort of spirit that I use the ceramic materials.
You said ceramics, fruit, and pig intestine all in the same sentence. Where is the intersection of ceramics, fruit, and pig intestine?
So, when I got to grad school, everybody was super fancy, talking about postmodernism, and I was just lost. And I was terrified when people would ask me, what are you making, why are you making it, why are you doing this? I had no idea. I just knew I liked to make stuff. So my husband said, don't think about all that stuff, just trust your gut. And so I really actually started making stomachs. And so basically, I'll make this little blue stomach. This is how I feel when I'm in seminars and I have to give a blurb about my work. And it's gnarly. And here's a little pink stomach. When I'm done, I feel more calm. I just made 1 million stomachs. One of my professors, she was like, why don't you use real guts? So that's where the pig intestine came in. So I went to a butcher and I got a hank, it's called, of pig intestine, which is 8 strands of 10 foot long. It comes in this bag of salt water, and the pig intestines are around a little plastic ring so they don't get tangled. And so I came home and I thought, okay, I'll start fooling around with them with fruit, just seeing how the material reacted. And it's just like clay in lots of ways, because you take it, it's got a water content to it. I would wrap it around, my favorite thing were mangoes. And then in the morning, I come back out and now it's shrunk, and now you can see the scale of the pig intestine, and they're all different. So I was completely hooked. And I loved it because the fruit over time, it would slowly start to decay and it would change. And I liked it too because every day it was different and I had something different to look at. So that's the long story of pig intestine and fruit. What I'm most interested in is objects to activate space, to make people feel slightly uncomfortable. That psychological line between, what happens when there's a whole mass of objects in one space and they're bigger than you are. That makes you feel very, very different than opening up a drawer and you have some little objects that, that's the size of your fingernail. And so I love playing with that kind of line. I've been thinking much, much more about that immersive sort of quality of having someone enter a space and have it not necessarily physically be around it, but psychologically it envelops you in different ways. I'm really interested in how objects in space or just space can activate places from what you've grown up with, what you've surrounded yourself with, what's been important to you, what scares you. If my work can activate those kinds of feelings and thoughts, then all of a sudden we're at a place where people are telling each other things. And we're at a place where we're like kids again. And we're not saying, oh, that's that and this is that. And that's why I purposely make my work just on the edge of you cannot quite have a word for it. I'm trying to make it so there's a place where you don't have the language and now you're back to your original senses and you're trying to figure this thing out for the first time. Purposeful obscurity.
Incredible work. Russo didn't always imagine being an artist.
At Princeton, she was an Olympic hopeful in field hockey, but injured her knee, so she turned to art.
And that will wrap up this week's Curate. Thanks for joining us. For more on arts and culture or the artists and stories you've seen on this broadcast, visit us online and also continue the arts conversation on our Facebook page.
I'm Heather Mazzoni, and again, we thank you for watching.
And I'm Jason Kipros. We'll see you next time for another edition of CURATE.